when you get your Scheel-Mann seats, it's going to come with all kinds of stuff. So we got the optional armrest. Set that aside. You get power cords for the heated portion of the seat. You can wire that up after the fact. That's not that big of a deal. You get these brackets here. So this goes on one side with the seat belt. So you actually have to pull this off of your old seat in order to use this on the new seat. So this bracket will hold that in place. This is the cover for that. And we'll go through all this in more detail as we get there. And then you have to add your slides. Once your slides are on, then you have to add your base, which this might be different depending on what you're doing. For ours, this is the base that goes into the Econoline series vans that will match up with our pedestals that we just put in. So the issue we had last night was one of the bolts on the slide. They're pre-drilled in the bottom of the seat here. One of those didn't line up, so it was hard to get that slide on. The other thing is after we got all of those on, trying to get this on, the tolerance on these bolts these holes and the bolts that go into the slides is so small, and when their hole was off, I mean, it had to have been a millimeter or less, but because their tolerance is so tight, we couldn't get that in. No matter how we maneuvered it and adjusted it, it just would not go. So we ended up having to take the whole thing apart. We actually put this on first to the slides, then put everything onto the seat, and that helped kind of adjust things to do that. When you're looking at their instructions, the one thing, if you do get this base, there are bolts in here that go to the pedestal. Before you put this on, make sure those bolts are in here, because if you don't, it won't fit. The bolts don't fit through the hole. We found that out the hard way, and their instructions don't say anything about putting those bolts in there first. We did make it work last night without having to take everything apart, but today I'll make sure that those bolts go in first. That way, when all this goes together, it just bolts right into the platform that we have up front. Your first step is to take your seatbelt, this bracket. It's actually going to go in here like this, and we're going to get this bolted on. They do send you a couple washers. They say to use 6 on the last one. It only took 3. You want to get that in there to where it sits pretty flush. If you can see that, everything lines up. And then they give you another bolt. Toss that on the other side, just like that. Okay. And then we're going to tighten all this up. Once we get that tightened, there are these. These are going to go inside of here. So you'll see on your plate, there's 2 holes. They go, actually, let me find the little screw here. You have a screw. The screw goes in the hole. And then you take your standoff, and that just screws onto there. Go ahead and do the other one a while. So then you end up with that. Okay. So I'm going to get all this tightened up, and then we'll jump on. Off to a fantastic start already. Was putting the cover on, and when I put the bolt on, decided to just shear right off. So we're going to makeshift something else to go in there and keep moving along. Once you're fully assembled for the seatbelt, should look like this. You have your cover on here, seatbelt in between. You certainly have your wires for the airbag that you'll have to make sure it goes through the pedestal if you have a pedestal, or reconnect however you disconnected it to begin with. So that's that. This is actually going to go on between the seat and the slides. So make sure that when you go to put your slide on, that this goes on first up against the seat, and then the slide goes on top of this. They also send a spacer, which I'm not sure, it's around here somewhere. Oh, here it is. So they also send a spacer for the other side that is the same thickness. So when you put your other slide on, make sure that you put that between the seat and the slide as well to make sure everything stays nice and even. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and start bolting on all the stuff to the bottom of the seat and go from there. Before you put the slides on, one of the things you have to do is you have to be able to move the slide in the forwardmost position. There are the little metal hooks here. You have to stick a screwdriver in here, which normally would be when you're sitting on a seat and you pull up that bar, be able to slide. That's what you're going to do with a screwdriver. You have to do that to undo the latch and be able to slide that. It can be a little tricky. If you have a longer screwdriver, it normally makes it a little bit easier so you can get a wedge in there. But make sure that you slide that all the way forward. That's going to give us access to the bolts back, or the holes back here, so that way we can put that on the seat. So now that we have the slide fully extended, we're going to go ahead and we're going to get these attached to the seat. The one thing you want to make sure is that you are putting your slides on the correct way, front to back. Also make sure that you're doing left side and right side. So these metal prongs here that are going to attach to a separate bar, they need to be facing the inside of the seat. And then the multiple holes here, they need to be on the bottom part of the slide, need to be facing the rear of the seat, which is this way for me. The other thing is when you go and you add your seat belt, make sure it's on the right, not the right side, but the correct side of the seat for when you put your seat in. So for me, that's going to be here. So that's going to go down first. Then we're going to put the slide down. And then we're going to grab okay, for these, it's going to be the silver screws that come with this, along with the little washer, which we dropped that one. So that's going to go on. So we're going to put our seat belt there, slide, making sure it's in the right, we have the right slide in the right direction. And then we're going to stick these bolts in here. There's going to be 3 on each side, 2 in the back, 1 in the front. It is hard to get your fingers in there. They do provide the Allen key if you need it. If you have a drill that has the attachment on it, it makes it a lot easier. It'll probably be a lot quicker just to get them down in there. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to tighten these up on this side, and then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, remembering to use the spacer that's in here. The spacer is going to line up, and we're going to do the exact same bolts on the other side of the seat. So with all of the rear bolts in, now what we need to do is we need to take the slide, we need to put the screwdriver in here again. We need to be able to shift these, so push down, slide that one back. We're going to do the same thing on the other side here. Slide that back. That gives you access to both of the front holes. So we're going to go ahead and get those screws in there too. So quick tip, when you go to put the rails on, when you put the back 2 bolts in, don't tighten them down all the way. Have them still a little loose, and then slide your slide back so you have access to the front hole, and then put the front bolt in. If you don't do that, the holes aren't going to line up and that front bolt will never go in, and then you're going to have to go back and loosen them anyway. The next step is going to be to take your seat adjustment bar. This allows the seat slides to go forward and back. You're going to install that. Now, I did notice on this one has holes here that are going to line up in the seat on the little pegs that stick out. Last night, the bar that I put in did not have those, and I didn't realize they were supposed to. What you're gonna do is you're gonna take the holes, they're gonna line up with the pegs, slide that in. And it should be a little snug to get it in there, especially through these two. There we go. There. So now with that on, we should be able to work our slides just fine. Okay. Now onto the base. Again, be sure that your bolts that are going to go into the base of your seat are in here first before you attach this. If you attach this and you don't have these in, you're going to have to take it all apart. So we're going to slide all of those in there. And of course I have it upside down so they don't want to stay. But basically what you're going to do, again, make sure your bolts are in there, in the holes that are going to go into the base. They provide the other screws here, and there is another hole back here with a welded nut. You want the welded nut facing up, and when you put this on, you're going to go through your slide, through the hole here, and that is going to screw right into that nut. Again, there's not a whole lot of room to get your fingers in here, so you'll probably have to use the Allen key to get that in there. But as you go, you're going to do that on all four corners. And after you do the front two, you're going to have to adjust your slides backwards so you have access to the rear ones. And then once that's on and your bolts are through here, you should be ready to go to be able to mount it to your seat base. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get all these tightened up. We'll see if we run into the same issue as we did last night with these not lining up. If we do, I'll toss the camera back on and I'll show you what we were talking about. All four of these bolts did go in better this time. They actually did line up. Last night we had one of these where the hole just did not line up at all, and it was super difficult to get that in there. Today it does look like these four have lined up, so I'm going to go ahead and finish getting these tightened up, and then we're going to head over to the base to get this thing installed. Up front here, we decided to go with swivel bases. I already have the passenger side installed, which is almost like a pedestal. The driver's side is slightly different. It does have more of a raised base over here. Doesn't make a difference, they still rotate. But these are pretty self-explanatory to install. If you remove your seats, you'll understand exactly what I'm talking about. It's 4 different bolts. You pull your old seat out. The new seat, this just goes right in the same bolt location. Reuse the same bolts. So when you take out your old seat, make sure you keep the hex or the star nut screws and then the bolts that go on the back, because you'll need to reuse those. And the only other thing you have to worry about is your airbag connection, and that I just left towards the back and then cut a new hole because we laid new flooring down, so I cut a new hole in the flooring to be able to run that up through. That is going to end up going under the base here, similar to that. So super simple to install these, and then with everything that comes with the Scheel-Mann, that just bolts right into place because all the holes line up, and they do line up pretty nice and even. The one thing you do have to do, and I'll show you here in a minute, is the airbag connection that's on the seat. You have to take that apart, the connection part, and that has to go through this center hole in order to connect. If you don't go through that center hole, apparently it doesn't have enough room to swivel around, and it could cause some pinching of the wire or breaking of the connection. But it's super simple to do. Just make sure you mark your wires whenever you pull that apart, slide that through, and then reconnect it. You should be all set. So I'm going to grab the seat. I'm going to pull that connector off, and then we'll get them installed. I'll show you a little bit how to do that connection, or the connector, here in just a minute. This is the airbag connector that is attached to the seat. you'll notice that on the driver's side, there's 4 wires that go in here. On the passenger side, there was only 2. So what we're going to do is we want to mark these first. I'm just going to mark 1 red and 1 orange, so that way I know. Actually, I got to put an R on that side. Okay. The other thing is you could take a photo of it, and that would help you too. But you want to make sure that they all go back into the same place. So we'll be good there. On the inside of this connector, you'll notice this red part. This, if you get a real small screwdriver, should just pop right out. You can see, just came right out. That's holding your pins in. Don't lose that. You'll need that. And then inside of here, I know it's probably really hard to see, but when you look at it, you'll see the pins. There is little tiny plastic pieces that are holding the pins inside of that. You want to be very careful, but what you'll do is you'll pry those plastic pieces back just slightly, enough that the pin will start to slide out. Don't go too far, otherwise you'll break that plastic piece, and you don't want to do that. So I got 1 there. Let's see if we can, there we go. So those 2 are actually sliding out. Let's get the other 2 here. Again, you got to be very careful with this, because if you break that plastic piece, it's not going to hold it in there the way it should. So take your time, make sure you do it right. Get these out of here a while. So those 2 are out. Making sure my marks are still there. Okay, so that's a part. You end up with this. Again, this is going to slide through that hole in the base that I showed you up front. This, you only have to do this if you have the bases that we bought. I believe it's from Bling My Rig. They have the hole there. If you're reinstalling Scheel-Mann seats to your regular base, the one that came with your old seats, you don't have to do this part. So keep that in mind. So I'm gonna go up here and we'll get this installed. If you have a second person to be able to help you get the holes lined up, it would make it much easier. The seats definitely aren't light, but it's in. I just have to tighten up those 4 bolts. I'll reconnect the airbag connection, and then we'll be all set. Well, folks, there you have it. Scheel-Mann seats in a Ford E450 ambulance. Not the easiest job in the world, especially because of their instructions and the fitment of their bolts, but we got the job done. Hopefully this video helps you out if you decide to do this yourself. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, subscribe, follow our adventures and the rest of our ambulance build. Look forward to see you next time. See you later.